this is what we've been waiting for, is to get this opportunity to play for this state championship. And now we're here. But he's had a couple big runs this season for us. But it was a great job at the point of attack of our offensive line.
Franchini, play fake, looking, going deep. Tyson's open, pitch and catch, touchdown.
Right now, it's whatever it takes.
This is the Chuck Smith Show on Cape Atlantic Live, presented by Ulmer's Appliance Service. Now, here's Coach Smith and your host, Nick Kosko.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Chuck Smith Show right here on Cape Atlantic Live, presented by Ulmer's Appliance Service. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. With me, as always, is head coach Chuck Smith. Coach, tough one for you guys on Friday, dropping a 5-3, 47-24 to Winslow, still undefeated, and at the top of South Jersey, Group 4. Valiant effort, but overall, just a little bit too much from the Eagles on Friday night. Going into the season finale now against Delsea, which we'll talk about in a little bit on Friday night. What was the message to the team after Friday night? And you guys were in it, you guys were out of it, back into it. Bit of a roller coaster type of game on Friday.
Yeah, it was I was proud of the way the team played. They competed, never gave up. Even when it got to 27-7, they didn't give up, and we were able to pull it back in to within 10 points going into the last quarter. But I really think the major part of the game, and there were several times where the game pendulum swayed, was 3 minutes and 48 seconds left in the second quarter, 7-7 ball game. They have us pinned deep in our own end. We have an errant snap on the punt, and they wind up tackling us down there around the 10-yard line. They score. It's 14-7. They kick off to us again. We have a great kickoff return. We have a positive play, and then we have a fumble, and they're able to take that turnover right around midfield and convert into 7 more points, and all of a sudden a 7-7 ball game. 2 minutes later, it becomes 21-7 going into half, and they got the ball coming out from half, and we're able to put it up there. But the guys, I thought they responded well. They could have easily folded the tent right there against a very, very explosive Winslow team, and came back and made it a battle. They really did. They went round and round. I know we scored 3 straight times there to get within 10, and then an unfortunate call that I'll dispute on pass interference. Kind of gave them more life on a second and long. Maybe we get them to punt again because we were pretty hot on offense at that point. And you never know what happens. But in all reality, we made a couple of mistakes at critical times, and we had a hard time stopping them in their passing game as it went.
Before I dive into kind of what went wrong at the end of the second quarter, at one point you guys did drive down the field in the opening drive, about a 6-minute drive, go up 7-0. We'll look at that highlight in a little bit. John Franchini to the freshman Dylan Granzow. And then I believe it was the ensuing possession where you guys appeared to cause a fumble, return it for a touchdown. Now, call was, I believe it was a touchdown on the field, and the refs overturned it, or maybe there was, maybe it's just some confusion of what happened during that sequence. What were you told there? And instead of a 14-0 ball game, Winslow gets the ball back, and ultimately they did not score on that drive. But again, it was a 7-0 ball game. Could have been a 2-score game. What was the explanation to you during that moment?
Yeah, it was a big momentum shifter there. We're up 7-0, and we're really putting the pedal to the metal on them. And, our corner, Lucas DiBiaso, comes off and hits a quarterback from behind. The pass or whatever goes backwards by 5 to 6 yards. And Chase Hogue was on the covering the swing route at the time and just scooped and scored. But, allegedly a whistle had blown. The ref said the arm was going forward. My dispute was, the arm was going forward, but the ball went backwards. It's still a backwards lateral. But supposedly the whistle blew and called the play dead. So that is unfortunate, because that was big. We needed everything we could get to stay toe-to-toe with Winslow.
Yeah.
That was one of those things, unfortunately, that won against us in that game. And, that. And then, of course, later we also were able to drive into the red zone. We didn't score. I thought about kicking a field goal at that time to go up 10-0 possibly, but you're not going to beat Winslow with field goals. Yeah. At that point in the game, we needed to score touchdowns, and they stuck us on 3rd and short, and then 4th and short again, and then they took the ball, and went down and scored.
At the end of that second quarter, as you just alluded to before in the open, they scored 21 unanswered points before going into the locker room. During those couple trips during the red zone, you guys were moving the ball pretty efficiently, very similar to your opening drive of the ball game, which ate up a lot of clock too. And I believe that was one of your keys to the game was to play ball control and obviously try to keep it out of there.
Yeah.
offense's hands because, again, they are explosive all over the field as we saw on Friday night. What exactly went wrong? Why do you think the offense stalled in the red zone when you guys were moving it down the field? We're close to basically knocking on the door and scoring again, maybe going up by a couple scores.
Yeah, I think they just outplayed us during those couple plays. They won those battles. They're very good on defense. They're not overly big, but they're very fast. Probably the fastest defense we've played all year. But they do a good job of it. They fly to the football, they make plays. That was a big momentum play too. Football is all about different momentum plays as you're going through it. That backwards lateral that could have went our way was a momentum shifter. Them scoring, the 2 touchdowns in a row in 2 minutes at the end was a big momentum shifter for them. We had them on the ropes, I think, in the first half there for a long time because the offense was on the field a lot. We were driving the football up and down the field. Our defense was doing a great job of getting them 3 and out, making them punt a few times, which they don't often do. And I think it was just they won those battles. They're a great football team. There's a reason why they're ranked the number 1 ranked school, public school in the state of Jersey. And they have some guys and some really good football players over there.
So we'll take a look at some of the highlights to kind of recap the game a little bit against Winslow. Again, a 47-24 victory for the Eagles. But the opening drive, this is where it was capped off here. A nice little touchdown pass and a good shifty move by Dylan Granzow, the freshman running back.
Yeah, he's a talent. Dylan came into a starting role a couple weeks ago. He's played a lot through the season. Whatever it is, he has it. He has the potential to be a very special football player at Mainland. And it was nice to see him. He's done a tremendous job all year. And, not many kids can make that move right there. We were just really thinking first down, and he caught that pass and made that little shifty move on the Winslow defender and scooted it in for a touchdown. And, I can't say enough about Johnny finding him on that play and just the individual play that Dylan made on that.
So you guys were up 7-0, and then we mentioned before how Winslow kind of came alive at the end of the half, and here is a big one in the third quarter where you guys are climbing back into it, but Jaden Poteet took it back the other way. It looked like a knuckleball a little bit from kicker Nate Kosko, and Poteet just managed to find a hole.
Yeah,
here.
It was a tough one because we just kicked the field goal trying to get some positive feel, after they had gone up 27-7. And, we drove down the field and kind of stalled a little bit. So we went for the field goal. Nate hit a 26 or 27-yard field goal. And this was the kickoff after. It was kind of low line drive and broken coverage in the middle and kind of took the air out of our tires for a second. But, this is what I was saying about the team. We battle back. We get it to 27-10 and then give up that kick. But, that was a momentum shifter. But we responded. We scored 2 straight possessions right after that.
Yeah, when you guys scored 2 straight possessions here, you guys score on 1, and then this big interception here, a nice little tip here from Liam Kennedy, and then obviously into the hands of Nate Rivera, who had a tremendous return on this pick as well.
Yeah, this was after we had already scored, and then they were still throwing the ball downfield, and Liam Kennedy made a nice play to deflect the pass, and Nate, was right in the right spot at the right time and made a great return on it, and got that momentum back on our side again. The kids were excited. We're just trying to score one at a time, and we were able to score the very next play.
When you talk about the momentum shift, and I know you just credited your team earlier in the show, is that what was the mentality like? Even when you guys were down 34-10, you obviously scored 2 times in a row, and this interception brought a lot of life back to the sideline. What was the mentality during that portion of the third quarter?
Yeah, the kids were very upbeat. There was no finger pointing, there was no yelling, screaming. Everybody was level-headed and calm. And it was just about battling and competing. And that's what we always say to the kids, you just never give up. There's going to be things not only in football, but in life where the chips are going to go against you. It's how you respond to those situations that determines the man and the person you're going to be. And that was one of the things there was never screaming, yelling. It was just like, okay, let's get going. Let's try to get something positive out of here. Keep our chins up, keep clawing back, and eventually, they made some plays and made it into a ball game again. I think a lot of people thought the doors were going to get knocked off the wagon once it got to 27-7. But the kids, respectfully came back and made it a ball game. We had a chance going into the fourth quarter still.
Yeah, here's his last highlight we'll show here. John Franchine and Jake Blum, one of the better throws from him all season long. A nice little over-the-shoulder fade here into the corner.
Yeah, we were fortunate we were able to throw the ball a bit against Winslow. And, they have that special connection, the two of them. And Johnny hung in there, took a hit on the play, put the ball in the perfect spot that only Jake could catch it. And Jake made a nice adjustment there at the end, going to the outside to pull the ball in, and he's Jake's having a great season this year. He's on the verge of becoming Mainland's all-time season leader in yardage and catches and all, and touchdown catches and all that stuff. And he had 100 and some yards catching, receiving the other night with a touchdown catch. And Johnny had a nice job, keeping us in the ball game when our running game kind of faltered there a little bit in the middle of the football game. Johnny was able to keep us in there with his throwing arm.
One more on the game, Coach, then we'll switch over to the Delsea game, which is coming up on Friday night on the road. You mentioned how you were highly respectful of the kids being able to battle back, and they didn't fold. Once it was 27-7, they didn't just sit back and slump on the sideline and let that game really get away. You fought back against the number one team in the state in terms of public schools. What kind of positives and momentum can you take from this game, despite the fact that some might look at the final score and say, well, it was a little lopsided? But what can you take up from this game on Friday night to kind of carry you into this final regular season game and obviously into the playoffs in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think the kids, you always want to battle. If you keep battling, you're going to have a chance. I think that proved it. We played these good teams, and we played a lot of great teams this past football season. And obviously, on paper, Winslow is the best team we've played, supposedly, with the record they have in their ranking at this point in the season. And they gave them a game. We had them on the ropes a couple times, we just weren't good enough to close the door on them or to get that just a little bit closer, one more score, to pull it within that. But I think the kids saw, you just never give up because you don't know what's going to happen, and I think that's good at this time of the year to get that. You got to learn from your losses. If you don't learn from your losses, you're going to have a hard time with everything. I think the kids learn from it. We watched the film the following day, point out some good, the bad, the good, all that stuff, things we need to get better at. And, we turned the cheek, we closed that page and move on to the next chapter. And that's where we are, with this. And we're just getting ready for this Delsea game coming up on Friday night.
Chuck Smith Show on Cape Atlantic Live, presented by Ulmer's Appliance Service. Coach, we'll move over to Delsea now, the defending Group 3 state champions. Now, they are only 2-5 this year, run into a tough schedule, a lot of roster turnover from last year. But again, they're coming off a big win, 35-6 over at Williamstown, so a bit of a local flair out in West Jersey. What do you make of Delsea this year? It's not the Delsea of last year, but it still seems like this is a pretty good football team. I believe it was 2 or 3 games this year they lost by either 3 points or less. So that 2-5 record could very well be, 4-3 or heck, even 5-2 based on who they've played this year. What were your initial impressions of Delsea going into Friday night?
They're good. They're not a 2-5 team,
yeah.
And that's the point we're trying to get across to the kids. I think they understand that, watching film with them. They're a well-coached football team. There's a lot of tradition out Delsea. Coach Marquez stepped down. He's back in the fold, supposedly. Came back into it last week, calling the plays from the press box. Their quarterback was injured for a little bit, and they had to move Russo, the all-state running back, to quarterback where he used to play when he was at Mainland. And, the quarterback came back last week against Williamstown, and Russo was able to go back to his fullback position. He's a very physical, tough runner, and the quarterback's a good athlete. And they're big up front. I mean, Delsea has always been, it seems like forever, has always been big, and they do have great line play on both sides of the football. And they're just a tough blue-collar type football team that likes ground and pound it. In all the years that I've known Delsea or gone against Delsea since the early 2000s, if they threw the ball 5 times in a game, that was probably a record. They just want to chew the clock out, physically dominate the game at the line of scrimmage. And it's no different this year. They've played a tough schedule. That's the hand they got dealt also, being a state champion and winning a lot of games over the years. And, they're a good football team. They have, going into this playoff round that's coming up, they have just a good chance of winning the whole thing, just like anybody else does, because they're really not a 2-5 football team. They're good. They're very good. A tough team, very disciplined too. They don't make many mistakes.
Based on where they are right now, they're currently number 15 overall in South Jersey Group 3. Top 16 make the playoffs. So they actually, based on the current snaking, which of course will be official next week after Friday and Saturday, of course, they are an 8 seed. They're on your they're in your sectional bracket. You guys are currently a 2 seed, number 3 overall. So they're essentially fighting for their playoff lives because if you guys come out with a win on Friday night, again, Mainland, you guys are pretty much assured of a playoff spot. It just depends on where you guys are going to fall for next week in the first round, but they could very well be out of the playoffs if you guys manage to win on Friday night. Do you think are you essentially expecting more of a juiced up Delsea team where they're like, we might be like, this might be a playoff game for them just to even get into the tournament.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of excitement on their side of the football right now because, the old coach is back calling plays, quarterback's back. They know they have to win to really guarantee themselves a playoff spot. I think they still might get in even if they lose, just the way it all looks at the bottom of that bracket. But, nobody wants to go into the playoffs on a losing streak.
Right.
You want to win, with a lot of confidence and so forth. So I think, we're going to get their best game of the season on Friday night. Definitely going to get their best game of the season on Friday night. Because it's like I told our kids, I said, this is a playoff game in essence coming up on Friday.
Right.
We're fighting to be hopefully a 2 seed, and be home for at least a couple rounds of the playoffs if we're fortunate enough to win. And if we lose, we could tumble down the ladder a little bit, and maybe have a home game and that's it. That's guaranteed. And we don't want to be on the losing side going into the playoffs, but we know it's going to be a smash mouth, toe-to-toe heavyweight fight on Friday night, it's not going to be easy, not going to be easy at all, and we got to give our best effort of the season on Friday night also.
Yeah, very similar to you guys last year where you fought for that 2 seed, hit the 2 home playoff games, and then went on the road en route to the state championship at Rutgers. So you already mentioned Dan Russo, who, was at Vineland before. He had to fill in a quarterback for Delsea for a little bit until Jimmy Reardon came back. I believe he's now going to be back in as a starter on Friday. But you mentioned how good their running backs are and how good their run game is. Dan Russo, Alex Grippo, they're very run heavy. When you look at them, I mean, I can only imagine during practice this week, not that it's easy to prepare for Delsea, but you guys have a sense of how they want to operate because they're very similar to you guys in that they want to use the run big time throughout the most of the game. They use multiple running backs. How is that simulation and looking at the film in order to prepare for this Delsea offense?
Yeah, well, it's hard because they have bruising physical running backs. It reminds me a lot of our backfield like last year, past couple of years. The big kids, especially on the wings. The Russo kid, I can remember when he was the quarterback at Vineland. Yeah. And he was running the team there. And I remember thinking to myself, man, this kid's going to be unbelievable by the time he's a senior. Now he's playing running back and linebacker, the last 2 seasons over there at Delsea. But, we're very, it's funny because we're very similar, but we're also very different in our offenses. We both run wing T. They're more traditional wing T, double tight, unbalanced formations, run it right at you, and maybe occasionally throw a play action pass in there. Where we're a little bit more spread out, a little bit more spread wing T, and throw the ball a lot more than they do. So it's similar offenses, but very different. When you're trying to simulate them, it's tough because you don't always have those kinds of backs on your scout team to give that physical presence to the defense that they have. Unless we put a bunch of our linemen in the backfield, and that's not going to work out well. But you do your best, with the play cards and their schemes and their tendencies and whatever. And I know they're doing the same thing with us because every team at this point in the season, you are what you are. Yep. You try to mask a couple things, do a couple things differently, but you are what you are. You know what you're good at and what you're not so good at this point in the season. And when push comes to shove, you tend to rely on what's got you there so far. So it's just a matter of who gets it done better.
On the flip side of things, I already mentioned Grippo and Russo. They're going to be carrying the football on Friday night. They also play linebacker, Russo especially, one of the better linebackers in South Jersey. I know Jimmy Reardon also plays defensive back, so another thing to watch out for. When you look at their defense, in terms of size, maybe speed, what is their bread and butter on defense? I mean, it seems like it does go through their linebackers and maybe a big push up front, at least in the middle of the defensive line.
Yeah, they're good up front, across the board on the defense line between their 2 D tackles and their defensive ends. Linebackers are very good. The Russo kid's a standout. He's a standout linebacker. And he's a good-looking kid on film. You look at him, and he just looks like a football player. He's not just a kid wearing pads out there running around. He looks like a football player, and he is a football player. He's a real good football player. But they're very disciplined too. They're good. They've been doing the same stuff for a very long time. It reminds me of the old Hamilton teams. The Hamilton kids. They come out of the womb and they're running wing T. And they do it their whole lives, and they get to Hamilton High School. Back in the day, and they were running wing T, and they were very, very good at it. They could walk in freshman year, and somebody would yell out 121 buck sweep, and they knew exactly what to do. They weren't learning anything new. That's really cool, and I think that's the culture that Delsea has had for a very long time. Because Coach Marquez, when he was at the helm there. I mean, I think they won something like, 13, 14, 15 sectional titles. And then last year, I think 2 years ago, they might have lost in the state championship. And then last year, they won the state championship. So there's a lot of tradition there. And you only have that tradition and that success when you have those building blocks and you're doing the same thing year in, year out, and your youth programs are doing those things year in, year out. So when the kids come, it's already embedded into them, and I know just over the years, back in the 2000s, we played them in the sectional final out there at Delsea, and we were fortunate enough to win the game 21-7. But I remember they had 3 running backs that each had 1,000 yards back then. They were good, and it was a hard fought game, and we were just able to score early on them. And it was like a heavyweight fight that you were hanging on in the 15th round, just praying for that bell to ring to get the game over with, because it was going to go any longer. It could have just swung the other way,
right?
But it's always fun to play good teams, it's great for the competition of it, to see where you stand. And it's good when you're going against a good staff also, because it becomes a real chess match in the schemes and what each staff is trying to accomplish with their kids.
Just to kind of circle back, and I'll leave you here with this one, Coach. You mentioned the tradition that they have, winning all these sectional titles in their program history, making the state finals a couple times, and obviously winning the whole thing last year. Now, just to throw it out there, depending upon how the seedings match up, whether they win or you guys win, I mean, there is maybe a small chance of there is a playoff rematch the very next week at your place. So I'm not going to say, is that in the back? I'm not going to ask if that's in the back of your head, where, you have to focus on this one to make sure you guys solidify your spot, and they want to solidify their spot as well. But I got to imagine maybe that's floating out there a little bit. And you emphasized it before about, you can't underestimate them just because of their record. This is still maybe a state championship caliber team.
Yeah.
Group 3 could very well be very random again, like it was last year. So I got to imagine the message all week is, you take care of business this week, even if we might see this team again the following week in the playoffs. You got to get the win here on Friday night first.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about winning on Friday night. We haven't really, we talked about the playoffs, maybe a little bit just about what the importance of this game is with PowerPoints and seeding, to be home, because everybody wants to play at home in the playoffs. Of course. And so that's the only emphasis, or the only thing we've talked about the playoffs. If we play them again, we play them again. It is what it is. It's always hard to beat a team twice, no matter what sport you're in. I can remember years ago, we really beat Ocean City in the last regular season game of the year. And I remember Kevin Smith contacted me on Sunday after we beat him on Friday night. And he's telling me one of his assistant coaches has it all figured out that we're going to play each other next week in the playoffs. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, back to back. And then they wound up pulling a big upset on us at our place, and won the game. And, that was at the beginning of the Repetti years and stuff, and had a great run there for a couple of years. But yeah, hey, if we play them again, we play them again. But it's all about this Friday. That's all we're worried about.
Friday night at Delsea, 6 p.m. on the road, regular season finale. Then you guys will be back home next week, which will have the first round playoff game, as long as you guys are at home on Cape Atlantic Live. Coach, appreciate the time as always. Good luck on Friday night. Looking forward to seeing where you guys end up in the playoff bracket. Group 3 should be very exciting. A lot of old school Cape Atlantic teams seem to be infiltrating the top 16 in Group 3 this year. So should be a next fun couple of weeks.
Yeah, it should be. And I really appreciate all you guys do. It's I've said this before, with the new video board that we have at the Mustang Corral, and Matt being able to patch in there and put the game up live on the video board while we're actually playing in front, and the amount of people who enjoy when the replays go up on the board, up there, it's almost like being at a college football game where, you can hear the fans booing because of the call the refs made when they show the replay up on the board, or, showing the kids in the touchdowns and replaying the touchdown, the big plays and stuff like that. It's added a really unique element to high school football, and especially at our home place, the Mustang Corral. And it's a real tribute to the work that you and Matt put into it to take it up another notch, not just a high school football broadcast, but you guys really put a professional spin on everything. And I really appreciate that.
Hey, we appreciate it, Coach. We keep doing our best, try to improve every week. Chuck Smith Show right here on Cape Atlantic Live, presented by Ulmer's Appliance Service. Be back next week, and the Mainland takes on Delsea on the road, 6 p.m. on Friday night.